Well, hey there, y'all. This here is Lenore Zann, aka Rogue of the X-Men, and you are listening to Pop Culture with Pat. I'll be on here talking about my book, A Rogue's Tale. You can pre-order at indigo.ca. See y'all later, sugar.
Guys, welcome back to Pop Culture with Pat. I'm so excited to be joined by today's guest. You know her from her iconic performance as Rogue in the X-Men animated series. She has a new book out called A Rogue's Tale. Lenore Zann, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, sugar.
You are very welcome.
Great
I
to
love
be
that.
here.
Thank you. So, yeah, I mean, crazy time in your life. X-Men 97, came out earlier this year, was beloved by fans. You got the new book coming out. I wanted
Mhm.
to kind of start off as far as with, returning as Rogue. Like, obviously,
Yeah.
you're reprising this character that you played in the 90s. I feel like it's natural to be protective of a character like this. What were some of the key elements that you were looking for and making sure that you wanted to return and, play this character once again?
Well, obviously, you need good scripts. And if the scripts are good, then the actor has something to actually play with. And as soon as I got the first few scripts, I realized I was in really good hands. Once I get a script, I cannot put it down until I'm finished. And it has me on the edge of my seat. And if I'm feeling that way, then I know the fans are going to feel that way. And so we've been blessed. We've been really blessed with a lot of great writers. And working with Bo DeMeo in the very beginning was excellent as well. And now all the other ones, the ones that have stayed, and there's new ones coming on. I'm really excited about where the show is going. And I think the fans are going to be very happy.
Oh, I know the writing has been incredible on the show, and yeah, I can't wait, obviously, for season two. What did you guys get greenlit up to? I know season two. Do we have season three
Yeah,
and
they've greenlit season three,
three?
and they're writing season three as we speak.
Perfect. Well, I can't wait to see that, obviously. And as far as getting to, revisit this character again, it's not often that you get to, do that. What was it like to
Right.
jump back into this character's headspace after, such a long period of time?
Some characters just stay with you. And I talk in the book about my very first starring role as Marilyn Monroe, in a rock opera on the life of Marilyn Monroe. That stays with you too. Marilyn getting into her head and what made her tick and what, all her vulnerabilities as well as her strengths. It's the same with Rogue. It's similar. I did Marilyn the first time around when I was 19, 20. Then I played her about three or four more times after that, right up to the age of like 40. And she died at 36, but I managed to play her again when I was like 40, even 42, something like that. And Rogue, I started off her when I was 30, and here I am playing her 30 years later. So there's a whole lot of living that goes on in between, but the character stays the same, and you're just able to bring all of your life experiences to that character and incorporate it into her moods and their swings. It gives you a little bit more to go on of looking back at them and going, what makes them tick? So experience is good in that sense.
And it's interesting too, because like obviously the series there isn't a big gap between where the series like the previous series
Right.
left off and where this new series picks up. So it's not like you're going
Exactly.
like, oh, like a 30-year difference in between like the character's journey. It's picking up right where
Right.
it left off.
Right, exactly. So the biggest trick was just to make sure that you jump right back into where you were and pick up from there. And I think we did a good job of doing that.
I think you guys did a pretty good job with that too, I think. For what was a 30-year journey going from that first series to this one. I'm just curious for you, were you curious how this was going to connect not only with fans of that original series where it's been, 30 years, but also new fans catching this? I mean, now it was going to be on Disney Plus. You have the streaming world and everything. Were you,
Yeah.
were you curious how that was going to
Yeah.
connect with fans?
Yeah, sure. I mean, to be honest, I mean, we the original X-Men did not know just how popular our show really was until about 5 years ago when we were invited to come to a reunion to have a reunion at a Comic-Con in New Braunfels, Texas. And then we were invited to one in Los Angeles. And when we met the fans, and the fans were like screaming, when we were on a panel, they were so excited to see us. We kind of went, what's going on? So we were just bowled over with how much people loved our show. And so then the pandemic happened, and of course, everybody's under lockdown, and then the show comes back, and now we're actually getting to meet the fans who are telling us just how much of a difference our show made to them in their lives, and how, many people say, you made my childhood,
Yeah.
and you taught me it's okay to be different at a time when I was questioning myself. And to hear these stories, and to have women come up to me and say, they were in an abusive relationship, and my character was in their heads telling them, you can get out, you can be strong, you can defeat this, you can, get out. It's kind of mind-blowing, but it's also very fulfilling to know that you've been part of something that really has had a positive effect on children and also on adults.
Yeah, I say it must have been pretty wild for you guys because I'm sure you kind of felt like almost in your own world when you were recording that first series, and now with social media, and I feel like now too, even the original series probably almost got a second life, like you said, during the pandemic because people were able to discover it on Disney Plus with their
Right.
parents and stuff like
Right.
that.
Exactly. Yeah. And viewership went up. And then once our show came out, viewership went up about 500% again. So of the original show. So I'm like, okay, this is fantastic. A whole new generation of kids are embracing it, and their parents are embracing their kids embracing it. So it's delightful to behold. And sometimes we get three generations of a family coming to our booth during a Comic-Con, and and the youngest are like 6 and 7 years old, and they're saying they love the show, they love Rogue. And I'm like, some little 6 year olds, and it's my favorite show I've ever seen. And I'm like, yeah, how many shows have they seen? One little 6 year old girl said that Rogue is her favorite character, and that she even watched episode 5, which is
Oh
a pretty
man.
heavy episode. She
Yeah.
said, I watched it 6 times. And I'm like, really? And her father goes, yeah, she just wanted to keep watching it. She loved it. I said, did you cry? She said, oh, yes, I cried. And I said, did you explain things to her? I said, to the dad. And he was like, oh, yes, we had a good conversation about death, and, how that's part of life and everything. And I said, yeah, so you didn't find it too sad? She said, well, I felt very sorry for Rogue because she lost both of her boyfriends.
Oh man. I mean that's so cool though that you can have a show and a character like this that's able to connect with people so
Yeah.
deeply of all different generations too. You know, you have like the original fans, but these newer fans. And I mean to have I go to these cons too all the time. Like I go to like several like throughout the year. And so
Right.
you see all the people dressed up in the different costumes. I'm sure you've probably gotten to see your fair share of rogues over the years.
Yes. Yes, there's a lot of rogues around, and I always like to write on there when I do an autograph for them on a print or something. I like to write, "There's a little rogue in all of us."
That's so cool. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean for you getting to play this character, you know, at two different times in your life, you know, when the original series came out, what did you kind of learn about yourself playing that character the initial time? And then did you learn anything different playing her again for the X-Men 97 series?
Um, I talk about this in the book quite a bit about how, life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans. And as an actor, you want to have a rich life so that you can draw from your personal experiences and put them into your characters. So I was able to do that. Like in the six, like the in 1996, I kind of hit bottom with my drinking and using of just party drugs, really. And I decided I got very almost suicidal. In fact, I was suicidal. And I talk about that in the book, and where you just lose hope. You lose hope that, things are going to get better. And I came to an epiphany. I had like a spiritual awakening. And I realized that the braver choice would be to actually live and face my fears and face my fears of what the future may hold. And when you do something like that and you come through it and you go through what I call the eye of the needle and you come out the other side, and you go on a road of sobriety and trying to like redefine yourself and get comfortable in your own skin, um, you're actually gifted with a whole lot of insight that you can then put into your performances. And I've been able to do that. And I believe that it's because of all the experiences and some traumatic things that have happened that I was able to then put into my work the second time around as Rogue.
And how, because I know, we've talked a little bit about like your book, how did the book kind of come about for you? Why did you feel like right now is the right time to release this book for you, as well?
Well, I've been writing it for 2 years now. And I decided that I should write my memoir. I've been asked a million times throughout my life, people saying, well, you need to write a book. You need to write a book about your life because you've had such an exciting and amazing life. Traveling around the world, doing all kinds of things as an actor, becoming a star in Canada, and then, being able to parlay that into a million other things, going into politics, all this kind of stuff. But I've never really had the time to do it. And I moved back home to Nova Scotia, where I had grown up, after my family moved there from Australia when I was a kid. And when I was in Nova Scotia, I went into politics for 12 years. I was an elected official in provincial politics and then federal politics. Um, and then the pandemic happened and we all got locked down. And then we had a terrible a mass shooting tragedy in my riding, in my constituency, it was the largest mass shooting that Canada has ever experienced.
Jeez.
And it was traumatic for everybody, including me. And I started getting death threats because I had said that, it was never too soon to look at more gun control, things like this. And so I went through like a PTSD, really, and was diagnosed with that. And then my niece, at the same time, my 17-year-old niece, Maya, was, she was diagnosed with terminal cancer and she died. And it was so hard. I was grieving. And then I lost my seat in the next election. So I'd won 4 elections in a row, and then I had one fifth election and I lost my seat in government. So I was really lost. I was depressed. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what I was going to do with the rest of my life. It was really bad. And then suddenly I got an email from the person who had invited us to the reunion, the X-Men reunion in New Braunfels, Texas, messaged me and said, "Hey, Lenore, there's someone I know she's a casting person and she's trying to find you. She's working with Disney and they might have a show that they might want you to do." And I was like, "Yeah, right. Tell me another one." you know? And I was like, wow, if this is really real, yeah, give her my phone number. And then I got a phone call, and it was Meredith Lane calling from Disney to say they had a new show and they'd like me to audition for it. And would I mind putting an audition down on tape and sending it to them? So I was like, sure. And so they sent it to me, and it had a different name. It was like Nancy or something like that. But the lines were Rogue's lines from the 90s.
You
I
knew it, yeah.
recognized them. I mean, you can't hide that from me. So
Yeah.
I looked at it, I went, oh, okay. I guess they're looking for Rogue. I better do Rogue for them. And then because things have changed since the 90s when there was no internet, There was no email, no internet, no cell phones.
Yep.
I was able to do a recording in my cell phone, turn it into an MP3 and email it to Los Angeles from Nova Scotia, Canada. And, I thought, well, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. What can you do? And then I got a message maybe 3 weeks later from Meredith saying they love the tape. They want to meet you on Zoom. So now I was like, okay. So I did a Zoom meeting with the producers, Bo DeMayo and Charlie Feldman and a bunch of the others and Meredith. And they went, Lenore, we love you. We're such fans. We were gonna audition you, but like will you come back and play a rogue for us again? And I was
That's so
like, you had me at hello, sugar. And
that's
so,
awesome.
so when you go through that kind of a experience where you're at your lowest and then you get a lifeline, I realized my life has been like that. It's been a lot like that. So I thought, it's time to write my book. It's right time to write the story and hopefully give other people hope. Give people hope when they're at their very end, when they feel like the tunnel is getting smaller and smaller and there's no light at the end, to just hold on and remember that there is a light at the end and we just have to keep going and not give up.
And this was your, your first book putting this together. What I'm curious for, like, what was some of the challenges that you faced in putting together a book like this? Because it's like if I were to sit down and just to put together a book, it's like I wouldn't have the first idea like where to
No.
start.
Right. And I didn't have anybody guiding me really, so the hardest thing is trying to figure out which stories in your life you want to use. And you might come up and have an idea ahead of time of, oh, well, I want to do this, 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 and this. But for me, it was really more organic. I figured I might as well start at the beginning. When I was a kid in Australia, what are my earliest recollections of the things that A made me want to become an actor, right?
Yep.
And B, what made me interested in politics and doing something in politics. So it started from there, and talking about being a little kid in Sydney, Australia, taking ballet and all the beauty of the flowers and the fauna and the animals in Australia, and then going between the city of Sydney and the countryside and staying with my grandmother out in the country, which we call the bush, and having my first friends really were the indigenous children in that area. And I didn't even know it at the time, but we were living on the edge of an indigenous reservation.
Oh wow.
And and one of the ladies of that area of Karua in New South Wales, she was an older black lady, and she was a friend of my grandmother's. And the whole thing of running back and forth with these kids between their grandmother's house and my grandmother's house, and having our grandmothers tell us stories about witches and the bush and mythological legends and stuff. It was an amazing childhood. And
Sounds
then,
like it.
right? And then starting off with my grandmother had this grandfather clock. And I came up with my first little acting exercise. Really, I look at it now that I played a game with her that she would sit on the couch, and every time I'd go in behind the grandfather clock, I would come out and I would perform, and I would be a different person, and she had to guess who I was. And I look at it now and go, yeah, like that's acting,
Yeah,
right?
that's
So I started there and then I went on from there. And, life is also happening to you while you're writing.
yep.
And so I did a lot of writing on planes because I was going to, by this time, to different Comic Cons and things after the pandemic. And so I found that writing on planes is really good for me because there's no distraction. I can just sit there and I can just write.
Yep.
And it's kind of I'm kind of in a zone. I'm in a, like I don't feel like I have to get up and do something. In fact, you can't,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, you're stuck there.
Right, exactly. So I went home to Australia last Christmas. I was home for 9 weeks. My dear father passed away,
Oh, I'm
and
sorry.
I loved him so much. Thank you. And he was the one who first got me interested in writing, and he would read to me stories at bedtime and take on the different characters, change his voice. And I'm sure that had something to do with my acting too.
Oh, for
But
sure.
you know, but once he died, I realized I wanted to go home to Australia to see our larger Australian Zann clan, who I'd grown up with as a kid. And so there's a 16-hour flight from LA to Sydney, and I wrote four chapters on the way
Yeah.
there and four chapters on the way back.
Wow.
So,
I mean, like,
yeah,
yeah, it's a long flight, so it gives you some time to work. I feel like the hardest thing for a lot of things, or, as far as like creativity goes, is the hardest thing, especially for a book, is to just get started, actually find a
yeah,
place to start, and then once you get going, I feel like stuff probably just starts coming,
it
flowing
does.
out of you.
Exactly. And that is exactly what happened. I started at the beginning and then I just kind of made my way through to the end. And various things happened while I was writing, and I would write like little notes to myself. I would write like, when my dad first got sick, I was writing notes to myself and I was writing poetry and stuff. And then later on, at the end of the book, when I'm sort of discussing the last few years of my life, I was able to go back to those notes and use them.
As far as, for Rogue, I'm curious with that character, even going back to like the original series too, but you can include like the X-Men 97 series. What were some of the most influential lines when, you were first reading him in the script that you just really connected with?
Well, I loved A Rogue's Tale, which I named my book kind of with that in mind, because you get to hear Rogue's origin story. And I loved the fact that Rogue went through a period of time where she really questioned her place in the order of things and why she was here. When she gets kicked out of her house by her father and goes kind of roaming around trying to figure out where she fits in and where does she belong. And of course, the getting involved with Mystique and the band of the mutants, and becoming a villain. She got led down the garden path, so to speak. But then she sees the light at the end of that and realizes that it doesn't feel right to her. There's something about it, especially after she takes Ms. Marvel's powers, and her mother insists on it. She just doesn't feel right about it. And then when she's searching some more for herself, and then the X-Men, Professor X calls out to her and says, "Mutant, I know you're hurting. Mutant, I know you're lonely. Come, we have a place for you. You belong here with us." And that's when she goes and she realizes that this is going to become her family, and it's her found family. And so many of our fans had to create their own families. They had to have found families because their own families did not accept them,
Yeah.
right? A lot of people in the LGBTQ community have told me it's very painful. Their parents don't accept them and they don't get it, and they're fundamentalist Christian or whatever, and they just don't accept them. And that's very painful. And so Rogue goes through all of that and then finds her quote unquote tribe. And I've been through that myself. Not that my parents were cruel or mean or didn't accept me, but I felt like I was always trying to prove myself to my mother, always trying to prove that I was um, good enough. And no matter what I did, it never felt like I was good enough, no matter what it was. And finally, I mean, I reached a point inside of myself where I had to go, I have to stop trying to please my mother. I have to accept myself.
Yeah.
And so when Rogue goes to Muir Island in The Cure, the episode called The Cure, she goes because she wants to be normal like everyone else. She wants to be able to touch. She wants to be just normal, whatever that is. And then she realizes in the course of that episode, no, actually, it's these powers that she had, these unique powers, even though they are painful to her, that make her who she is. And she says, "I reckon I am my powers and the good they can do, and I reckon I can live with that." And then she says, "There ain't no cure for who you are." And I just love that.
Such a good line. I mean, yeah, I mean, like such a personable like character for you too. And And I
Mm.
know, for X-Men 97 with episode 5, you had dealt with your own personal loss, going into filming that episode, giving what I think is one of the best performances of the year that we've seen, on not only on TV, but I think even like movies as well. What did it mean to you to once that episode came out and just to see that it's connected with so many people on, different levels and such just deeply emotionally? What does that mean to you as an artist to know that that is connected with people on that level?
Oh my gosh, that means the world to me. I mean, I think what actors want to do is we want to connect with people. And it's an energetic thing. We want to energetically connect with people and we want to make people feel things and feel their own emotions, whatever those are. And we're all made up of a layer of different emotions, layer after layer after layer. And it takes a lot of self discovery to really figure out what makes you tick. And so the actor's job is to try and figure that out for the characters that we play and use our own emotions and our own layers of emotion to express that. So to do that particular episode was a complete gift for any actor. And for me, it was particularly poignant at that time because not only had I gone through all my own self discovery over the years and reaching a point where I got sober and all of that, but also because my young niece of 17 had just passed away and I was deeply grieving Maya and deeply grieving the loss of Maya, the loss of my job, my work as a member of parliament. I just lost my seat and I was just broken. And I wanted to express that authentically just by using my voice, my instrument, my voice. And I felt like if I can authentically convey that feeling of loss and grieving, there are many other people out there who have lost loved ones recently in the pandemic. All these shootings that people are, it's rampant and people are grieving and people are hurting and people are suffering. So I wanted to be able to express through my voice in a way the feelings that would make them also feel their own feelings and release them with tears and hopefully have a cathartic experience and have a healing experience from it. And to watch online as people were exactly saying that that's what was happening for them, I was like, ah, I did what I set out to do.
I mean, it was a beautiful but very shocking, as say, episode as well. Like obviously, no one was expecting that to to happen, at the end. But I mean, yeah, your performance was amazing. It touched me, and I know it touched millions of viewers out there who got to see it. The amount of reaction videos that I've seen watching that particular episode and get to that end, and no matter how many reaction videos I've seen, every time that I watch that. I always get emotional like myself, just, and that you get caught up in that moment. So, I mean, thank you for that, for that beautiful performance.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. That's so kind of you. And yeah, it was really a gift. I was so glad I got to be able to do that for people.
Well, Lenore, I'd want to say thank you so much, for your time today. It's been great getting to talk to you. As far as just, keeping up to date with your work, one, where can fans, stay up to date with your work? And then also, as far as like your book goes, where can fans check out your book?
Yeah, so people can follow me on Instagram at Lenore Zann, LENOREZANN, Twitter at Zann Lenore. And then my book is available for pre-order right now on indigo.ca. Anywhere in North America, they will send the book, and it will be available on Amazon probably next month. But for right now, indigo.ca and then later on Amazon. And it's called A Rogue's Tale. And I hope it gives people hope.
Thank you so much, Lenore. I'll make sure to put that down below in the description of the video. It was an honor getting to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time today, and
You're welcome.
you are welcome back anytime in the future.
Thank you. Well, hey there, y'all. This here is Lenore Zann, aka Rogue of the X-Men, and you are listening to Pop Culture with Pat. I'll be on here talking about my book, A Rogue's Tale. You can pre-order at indigo.ca. See y'all later, sugar.